Hi, everybody. John Fenn here with some more thoughts this week. The question is relationship-based faith or structure-based faith? And this stems from, I'll share an experience that in early February of 2001, I had been searching the Lord for where he was going to move next. And I was at a church called Joshua Creek in Mississauga, Ontario, in the part of the larger Toronto area, and about to minister there. But right in the middle of the worship, with my eyes wide open, suddenly Jesus was standing there right between the band members. And I shut my eyes, I could still see him. And I opened my eyes, I could still see him. I was in the Spirit. And he came walking over to me because I'd been searching, where are you moving next? What's next? And he said this to me. He said, see what I see. People running to and fro to this meeting and that, looking for the spectacular, thinking that is supernatural, while they miss the supernatural work in their midst, even in their own hearts, for the process of discipleship is supernatural. In fact, that's why our website is supernaturalhousechurch.org, because the process of discipleship is supernatural. And then he said this, he says, as it was in the beginning, so it must be now, I'm moving in relationships. And that's the crux of what he shared that day. And that set me on a long 8-month journey to study Scripture and to relearn what I knew about my faith. He said a couple of key things. He said, see what I see. That is to have his perspective. People running to and fro looking for the spectacular because they thinking that is the supernatural, while they miss the supernatural work in their midst, even in their own hearts. And we so overlook the true supernatural work in our hearts because we are looking out there for a structure. The first meeting with the Lord really was Adam and Eve in the garden. There was no other structure than the Lord walking and talking with them where they lived. In fact, if you want to say it this way, say the very first occasion of where two or more are gathered in his name, there is he in the midst of them, was actually there in the Garden of Eden. There was no structure to it. It was just the Lord in the home. It was family-based faith. It wasn't structure-based. It wasn't based on a formula. It was just based on walking and talking with the Lord out of the home. We can flash forward to Genesis chapter 18, where I think it's in 18 verses 17 through 19, that the Lord and two angels have come and had dinner with Abraham. They appear in human form and they come and have dinner with Abraham. The two angels go on in chapter 19 to rescue Lot and his family. And the Lord lingers behind. And in verses 17, 18, 19, he says this. He says, shall I hide from Abraham that which I'm about to do, seeing that he will surely become a great and mighty nation, and he'll raise up his household and his children after him in the ways of the Lord. And so that is a fascinating revelation there in Genesis 18, because the Lord is giving revelation into the earth based on the quality of Abraham's family life. Shall I hide from Abraham that which I'm about to do, seeing that he'll become a great nation and he'll raise up his household and his children after him in the ways of the Lord. So, a lot of times people will say, I want more revelation. I want more revelation. I want God to speak to me. And one of the first things to do is, based on Genesis chapter 18 right there, the Lord was basing it on the quality of the family life. So I'll sometimes tell people, go back and make sure your relationship with your spouse is strong and healthy and balanced, and your children, etc. Work on your relationships. And that is often a key to receiving more revelation. But we can flash forward to the book of Leviticus, where the Lord tells in Deuteronomy chapter 6, where he says, you'll speak of the Lord when you come into your house and when you go out of your house, and when you rise up and when you lie down, you'll speak these things to your children. In fact, this was so important. Deuteronomy in general is important because Deuteronomy is Moses telling the law of the Lord to the children born in the wilderness. Exodus and Leviticus, and to a degree Numbers, covers the law to the people who came out of Egypt. But you recall that they tested the Lord 10 times, saying, we either want to go back to Egypt or we want to die in the wilderness. And finally, the 10th time in Numbers chapter 14, the Lord says, going back to Egypt is not an option, guys, the way you left it, and what you do when you get back. So that's not an option. But you want to die in the wilderness, I'll give you what you want. You want to die, I'll let you die. So, they spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness, and one by one they dropped off, but they had children along the way. So Deuteronomy is the retelling of the Mosaic law to the children of those who came out of Egypt. And it is in Deuteronomy chapter 6 that he says, tell these things to your children. So it's all about family-based and everything. And we could go on and on. Even Malachi closes with, I'm going to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers. So it's all basically family-based and relationship-based faith. When the Lord appeared to me there in February of 2001, February 4th, and he said, people running to and fro. And I guess what I'm saying today is, don't be so quick to run to and fro looking for the spectacular. And you and I each know the frustration that we felt where we have an urgent prayer request or something, and the Lord seems to not be answering it or moving on our behalf, and yet he's dealing with us about how we treated, a coworker or our spouse or something. And it's like, okay, Lord, I'll deal with it in this area if you'll just answer my prayer over here. Well, that's kind of like looking for the spectacular while overlooking the supernatural work in our heart. If we keep our priorities straight and work in our heart first, work on the things in our heart, then the relationships will flow from there. The rest of the answered prayer will flow from there. My experience has been most answered prayer, most healings, most everything that I'm looking for actually flows out of the intimacy I have with the Lord. It's not structure based. It is relationship based. We're going to stand before the Lord one-on-one. We're not going to stand before your pastor, the church board. There's not going to be some sort of a structure there when you get to give account of your life. It's just going to be you and the Lord by yourself. And so work right now to just develop that relationship. One of the things that I recognize that I was blessed with early on was really knowing enough about the Lord that I knew more about him than I did the structure. I was raised Anglican or Episcopalian, and my mom found great peace and great comfort in the structure and everything and the history of the church and everything. I did not. I needed a father. And so I just started talking to the Father. And I found it on the basis of him as my creator. And really that's very fundamental, that people sometimes will come to me. I'll get, one of the most common emails I get is people saying that I don't know the Father. And they find out that they knew God only through the structure of the church. They only knew God through the sermons of others and the teachings of others, and they have journals loaded with notes from teachings with others. And one of the things I'll say is go back to the fact that he's the creator and we are a creation, and just start thanking him and complimenting him on the morning sunrise, the sunset, the things you find in nature. Get real that, he's God, we're not. And just love him starting from there, and just include him conversationally in your life. That way, when you do go to church, if you go to a church where there's structure, or if you're a home-based church like we are, and there's going to be some sort of a flow, there's got to have some sort of organization. I'm not saying anything against that. I'm just saying that is not our core. And what's happening right now around the world, what we see in the home-based churches and the relationship-based churches, which are really family-based churches, is that people are getting to know one another and walk through life together. And the gatherings, the weekly gatherings, are the icing on the cake. It's the opening of the present, because it's merely a continuation of the relationship with the Lord and with each other that you have through the week. So when you all come together to worship and to pray for one another, support one another, and have a meal together and everything else, that's just the icing on the cake. So I guess my encouragement today is to go back, as I did. I think on those words a lot, where the Lord said, see what I see. People running to and fro to this meeting and that, looking for the spectacular, thinking that is supernatural, while they miss the supernatural work in their midst, even in their own hearts, for the process of discipleship is supernatural. And then the next thing he said was this: as it was in the beginning, so it must be now. I'm moving in relationships. So if you really want to find where the Lord is moving, he's moving in relationships, as it was at the beginning, walking with Adam and Eve in the garden, as it was at the beginning of the church age in Acts chapter 2, going from house to house. He's working in relationships. So if you want to see the move of the Lord, then work on those relationships. Forgive, give grace, careful with how you judge things. Judge the fruit, don't judge the heart. And just walk with the Lord. What did he tell Micah? He said to love justice, to do mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. So it's relationship-based, not structure-based faith. All right, God bless. And we will finish.